This is Dr. Ron, Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom on leadership, goal setting, and productivity. This is a vitamin and supplement for your mind, for if you're going to change anything in your life, you have to start with changing your thinking, which will change your heart, life, attitude, and actions. I'm glad you've joined us today. Wherever it is that you receive podcasts, be it Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, why don't you subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to begin with a word of wisdom, a quote that describes the life of the first most influential person in my life, my grandmother. And just observing her life, I learned a lesson. If you love other people, it is very difficult for people not to love you back. Now, we have this idea that that's easy to say if you have all of life going for you. But my grandmother was a little 4'11" lady, and she was totally blind. She'd only finished the 9th grade, but was the wisest, smartest person I have ever known. And she had a deep faith in God and a trust in her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Because my mother was working, I was in the care of my grandmother a lot. And in spite of some things in my life that weren't ideal, I never grew up without knowing that I was loved. My mother loved me, my grandmother loved me, other members of my family, my church, neighborhood. So I never had this sense that I wasn't loved. And now as I'm in the last third of my life or so, I can look back and believe, solidly believe, if you know you're loved, you can make it. I happen to know that I'm also loved by God. Now, my grandmother, like everyone else, makes a choice. You make choices, I make choices. Bad things happen to us. Like I said, she lost her one eye in a childhood accident. Another one later in life, she lost her sight in the other eye. And there are people, when faced with that kind of a difficulty, will just become embittered and their soul will shrivel up and they become miserable. And yet I've seen people, like my grandmother, facing those kinds of obstacles, who face it with love and faith. Not saying there weren't some down days, and I'm not saying there was. They face it with love and just believe that God is for them. My grandmother had the greatest developed sense of humor of anyone I know. And when she and I would go to church together, because she was blind, I was her seeing eye dog. I would take her to her Sunday school class, drop her off after, go to my class, come back early to get her, take her to the sanctuary. We sat the second row every Sunday. But there was one thing I knew about my grandmother. She was absolutely interested in others. She and the preacher were the only two people at church that had people actually stand in line to talk to them. And it was because my grandmother was empathetic, concerned, not self-focused, but focused on others. When I came to pastor a church in the city where I live today, Indianapolis, I've actually come full circle back. But in 1996, I came to pastor in Indianapolis to a church that was going through a real difficult time. And there were days and weeks where it was a little difficult trying to pull everybody together. There was a young family in the church that had a little girl. The little girl's name was Lauren. She was 4 years old. And I remember one night when she was coming to the children's programming on a Wednesday night, her daddy had her up in her arms, and he looks at me and says, "Do you know who that is?" And she said, "Pastor," and she reached out her arms and she embraced me. I actually wrote an article about it way back there, 3 things I learned from 4-year-old Lauren Kramer. And I had learned that lesson that I'm talking about today. If you love other people, it's pretty hard for them not to love you back. Well, not everybody was loving all that was happening in those days, And so I would kind of wait at the door for 4-year-old Lauren to come into the church and to greet me with a hug, because is there something about when somebody loves you, you just sort of gravitate toward them. Circle back to where I am today. I actually officiated the wedding of little Lauren, who isn't a young child anymore. So you might say, what does this have to do with leadership? And what does this have to do with our lives? I've never heard anyone talk about how love is important for leadership. But I'm here today to tell you, if you're going to be an effective leader, lead with your heart, lead with love. First of all, the loving thing to do in leadership is to extend love and kindness to everyone you meet. Now, I understand there are times you have to deal with difficult circumstances and difficult people, and there are times when you just have to make tough decisions and let the chips fall where they may. I get all of that, and I understand all of that. But here's what I'm saying. Mostly, let's love and be kind. I think one of the loving things that if you are in a position of a boss at work is remind the people and remind yourself that we're only successful as we work together. We're only successful if we can come together. I think the loving thing to do in leadership is to respect everyone you come in contact, regardless of age, regardless of what position they fulfill in your company, makes no difference. Learn to respect and honor everyone you meet. When was the last time you told someone, you looked them in the eye and you told them, I believe in you. You are a blessing. You are making a difference. There are so many people who are shriveling up as we speak in their soul, who just need a word of affirmation and encouragement from someone to say, hey there, friend, I believe in you. I think one of the other loving things that those of us in leadership positions forget sometimes is we forget to say thank you. Oh, we say they get a paycheck or they know that we appreciate them, but all of us could use a verbal word of encouragement. Thank you for taking care of that. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for coming alongside and making me so much better than I could be by myself. Thank you very much. Another loving thing that a leader can do, whether it's in our home, at work, wherever we are, is to listen. Listening is something I am working on in these days in my life. I have been a person who has spoken for a living since 1981. Therefore, I almost feel like I'm a professional speaker, a professional talker. And yet I have one mouth and two ears, and I believe God intended that to be that way. Have you really listened to the people around you? Have you listened to your spouse, your children, your neighbors, the people at work, your friends? The most valuable gift we can give someone is the gift of our time and the gift of listening. I've already referred to in a previous podcast that the fact that I try to listen to people around me has been one of the greatest learning tools that I have ever experienced. One of the most loving things we can do is to be quiet for a few moments, let someone else talk, and make eye contact, focus in on them, and really listen to what they have to say. I think you'll find these just few simple steps to show love toward the people that are all around us will keep us from one of the most dangerous hazards of leadership, and that is the fact that it's quite easy for us to become isolated, to believe our own press clippings, to surround ourselves with people who only tell us what they think we want to hear and won't tell us what we need to hear. This past Sunday, I was at a service where we honored a long-time pastor who is retiring. And he and I have been very good friends for a long time. We've worked together on committees and boards. And I mentioned when it was my turn to participate in the service that the pastor there is a person that he and I have not always agreed. As a matter of fact, he is one of my more valuable, true, and trusted friends because he hasn't always told me what I wanted to hear. He's always told me what I needed to hear. Now, he's always done it in a loving and kind way. I never had to worry about this person going around talking about me behind my back. If he had something to say, he came to see me privately. We closed the door. We hashed it out. We prayed together. We got rid of all of it. We embraced. We made whatever corrections we had to make. And when we left the room, that was the end of it. That, my friend, is a true friend and a true loving thing for a leader to do. I'm not talking about loving as in sugarcoating everything or ignoring reality, but even when you have to say something tough and difficult, it can still be done in a kind and loving manner. And remember, leader, if you love the people, it's mighty hard for the people not to love you back. This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom on leadership, goal setting, and productivity. And that's my word of wisdom for you today. Again, sign up wherever you download podcasts and leave a review. And until next time, God bless you. Have a great day.